Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 13th of April 2022 and we will be discussing the following during the course of our show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the situation as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, the economic fallout of which is seen through its defaulting on the 51 billion foreign debt. On Tuesday this happened, and the nation of course is grappling with the worst economic crisis since its independence in 1948. It has a lot of repercussions, whether it be political repercussions, whether it be repercussions on the daily lives of people. We'll be discussing that, how the Sri Lankan economy has been affected by it all and how Sri Lanka can move forward in this current crisis. This is our first story. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Pakistan and its foreign policy. How can Pakistan balance the relationship as far as its cooperation or collaboration or friendship with countries such as China or the United States of America or India, even, with which of course we have a lot of issues at hand, or other countries are concerned. How can Pakistan balance this relationship between, for example, the United States and China? This is going to be our second segment, and which will be trying to understand the future of Pakistan's foreign policy. Then we'll be talking about the Vaisakhi Mela, for which around 2,000 Sikhs have arrived from India for this festival. They of course will be provided the adequate measures and the security, and they will of course be going to the necessary places where they will be attending this Vaisakhi Mela tomorrow. In fact, it's a very important Mela for the Sikh community across the world, including those from India, and Pakistan, as it has always facilitated, still facilitates the Sikh community. Then we'll be talking about Sir Ganga Ram, the father of modern Lahore, as he is called. Today is his birth anniversary. He has designed and he has built the GPO, the Lahore Museum, the HSN College, the NCA, the Ganga Ram Hospital, Lady McLagan School, Lahore College for Women, Haley College, and so much more. So of course we'll pay tribute to Sir Ganga Ram. And finally we'll be talking about the death anniversary of Mashal Khan. Today is the 5th death anniversary of this brave young man who was killed for alleged blasphemous content that he had talked about, but of course all of it was later revealed to be untrue, as a result of which many of those who were involved in his killing were put behind bars. We will be talking about Mashal Khan, and of course we'll be talking about how we need to move forward as far as not using blasphemy as a tool to put innocent people behind bars or even killing them. Let's begin with our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns Sri Lanka and of course the economic crisis, the political crisis that it is currently engulfed with. We'll come with our guests, but before that, a short report.
Island nation of 22 million is facing an economic and political crisis whereby recent developments, including the economic fallout from the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, triggered the situation. Embroiled in worst economic downturn since independence in 1948, with crippling inflation sending the cost of basic goods skyrocketing, Sri Lankan Finance Ministry stated that country is defaulting on all external obligations, including loans from foreign governments ahead of an International Monetary Fund bailout. A Finance Ministry statement pledges fair and equitable treatment of all creditors ahead of an IMF-assisted recovery program. Amid mass protests and demands for the president's resignation, Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's ruling coalition has lost its majority in the parliament. At least 41 legislators from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party walked out of the alliance, whereby President Rajapaksa dissolved his cabinet and sought to form a unity government. Sri Lanka's largest opposition political alliance, the United People's Power, rejected the proposal to form unity government and urged resignation of president. Thousands of people are camped outside President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's office in the capital Colombo, calling for him to step down. Estimates show Sri Lanka needs $7 billion to service its debt load this year, against just $1.9 billion in reserves at the end of March.
Now, to talk more about this, we've been joined by our guest, Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, who is an economist. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. It's always a pleasure to have you on our show. Dr. Saab, we have discussed Sri Lanka in the recent past as well, but I'd like to understand now that it has defaulted on its foreign debt around 51 billion US dollars, what kind of economic outlook do you foresee for Sri Lanka? Do you feel it can regain the lost ground?
Omar, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to be on PTV World. Let me start with looking at what really happened. If we could just do a very quick review, just in 2019, they did some populist tax cuts. That coupled with the fact that they stopped using chemicals in agriculture production, where they were producing a lot of tea and exporting it, so that slowed down. That coupled with COVID, where remittances dropped and tourism dropped. So a couple of bad policy decisions, exogenous circumstances, and now the Ukraine conflict, due to which the prices got aggravated. They ended up in a position where servicing the 50 odd billion dollars of foreign debt became difficult for an economy of the size of only $81 billion. They have taken some measures themselves, which relate to increasing the interest rate, devaluing their currency, and putting curbs on the non-essential imports. You've got to remember that they have run an approximate trade deficit of $10 billion. So all this points to the fact that good economic policies are essential for political stability, to make sure that the people don't get into the kind of difficulty they have there. And lastly, that the international partners and in the international bilateral and multilateral partners, your reputation stays. Now they've are in talks with the IMF for what would be the 17th IMF program that Sri Lanka would undertake. I think what would also happen is that they would reschedule part of their debt, which is due this year, and part of their medium-term debt. So their payments would become slower as the economy regains its exports and remittances, and after COVID also opens up its borders to international travel. What would also be needed is that their agriculture picks up again, so that the tea and the other items that they import, that they export, become viable as we move on. And then there are the bilateral partners. I think China has been a big bilateral partner of investment. Japan has been another one. They have assured them that they would continue to give them money. You will remember that they had built an infrastructure port, later for which the payments could not be made, and China company took it over for a lease of, I think, over $1 billion for 99 years. So there would be more rescheduling there as well. So, all in all, the debt restructuring, ensuring that the payables are met through the IMF and the bilateral loans, and they open up their economy, they do the structural changes that are required to increase their productivity. I think that would be the way forward. But the people will feel difficulties as we move on of the adjustments that are taking place in the
All right,
economy.
you said, Dr. Saab, that the people are going to face difficulties. Apart from these difficulties that, of course, we see, and that is why a lot of them are protesting even in front of the president's house, which is quite exceptional for a country like Sri Lanka. Do you feel, as a lot of people are asking the question, whether this default is a temporary one, or is it going to be a long-term one?
So the most of the difficulties that people feel are in two areas. One, inflation is running at about 19% in March. Two, the availability of medicines, fuel, and essentials have dried up. So there's a kind of rationing taking place. The
And
fuel
then the
drying up
electricity shutdowns of 13 hours plus in almost all of the areas in Sri Lanka.
Correct. So that further aggravates the life of people. Of course, many would have then lost their jobs. And as people lose jobs, their ability to pay becomes difficult. Schools have been closed because they didn't have ink and paper for children, so their school year is wasted. So all in all, a difficult situation. That I think once IMF comes on board, we always say that IMF is the doctor when you are in ICU, when the economy is in an ICU position. Their economy is certainly in an ICU or beyond right now. A debt restructuring would happen. The IMF would also ensure that this debt restructuring is not only with the multilateral partners, but also with the bilateral partners. And
All
once
right.
that is assured, the Sri Lankans would start making the payments. And they have a bond due shortly, I think in July. So they would have to see how to have a new bond. So they may float a new bond as the IMF program comes in. If a new bond is floated, those proceeds could be used to pay the earlier bond, and so on and so forth. So this whole schedule will be created, and I'm hoping that the plight of the people would be better as we move beyond summer, and the use of energy is lessened, and people can have controlled inflation, and that too coupled, I hope, with the situation in the geopolitical global economics becoming better, the oil not rising to the levels that we have seen earlier, and the inflationary global exogenous shock also being managed. So, that's the kind of overall situation there.
In one word, is this default going to be temporary or long term?
I hope in the next 3 months they would sort with the IMF, and so it would be a temporary default, and reschedulings would happen.
All right, you talked about the agricultural reforms. Now, we know that there were some changes made as far as the agriculture is concerned. The traditional agriculturists were put aside and they wanted to move with new avenues as far as agriculture is concerned. And this is one of the reasons why this economic downfall happened. Now that there is a fertilizer subsidy that is being given to the farmers, do you feel this will also help the agricultural sector or the farmers community?
So this is a very important point. You see, this is the whole point about where it makes us think about the green revolution in the world. It makes us think that you have to move to a green revolution. You have to do green energy. You have to do better agriculture productivity. But you also have to remember that there is a pain attached to it. There is a cost attached to it. One of the reasons you have the global price increase of oil is that the investment, the capital expenditures required for oil in the last several years have slowed down. So that has slowed down the production of oil and the investment that has been done. So similarly, in agriculture, when you teach the farmers to move on to this kind of economy where you are using less of fertilizer, your productivity goes down. So the other transitory measures that are required to make sure that your productivity goes up, what is going on in the world in terms of the third global revolution in agriculture have to take over. There is a transition in the world taking over. That transition by governments, by academia, by industry, by the farming community has to be adopted in a way where the pain is less, but the transition is there so that we can protect our environment, yet the transition comes with a cost which doesn't bear a heavy-handedness on the global community. So that is the policy calibration that has to be done by countries and the global partners as well.
Dr. Khaqan, you talked about bilateral partners of Sri Lanka, and I can think of two very quickly, India and China. Do you feel that these partners will also help Sri Lanka in this current state? Because we know that India is supplying a lot of commodities to Sri Lanka as we speak. What about China? Do you feel it will also step in?
Yeah, I've recently heard that China has promised that they will continue to furnish lines to the difficult economic situation in Sri Lanka. I think a $500 million oil facility has been given by India. And there is a third important partner here to mention, you've rightly mentioned too, is Japan. Japan's investments are actually higher than China's. And so I'm hoping that they would continue to do the same. And so the help of bilateral partners putting in the necessary money and the kind of goods that are required and their medicines. The energy needs and the basic food items, along with hopefully they had Ukraine as a wheat trading partner. Hopefully things would calm down there. So that's the overall policy mix as far as the bilateral partners are concerned.
You know, when we talk economy, even politics sometimes is hinged on a country's economy. The political crisis in Sri Lanka is also due to the economic crisis. Now, looking at the political issue in Sri Lanka, do you feel some kind of stability will be brought about? The ruling party says it has a majority. The opposition does not want to be part of the government. It says there is a coalition. They are talking about a new form of government. They talk about dynastical politics as well. Where is politics in Sri Lanka going in your point of view?
So, you remember the phrase by the American president, it's the economy, stupid. So it's always the economy. I mean, globally, because you have an inflation shock, some countries have managed it better. Oil producing countries have had more difficulty because the oil shock has been higher for them, and the pass through to the food items causes difficulty. So Sri Lanka is now a classic example where an economic shock or an economic handling of the matter, which could have been more prudent, has led to a difficult situation on the political side. Though this is the government in power claims that it's been a government which has, established a political calm in Sri Lanka over the long term. But of course, I'm hearing that they are now engaging with the protesters, and there is a hope for a relative calm. I think in the short run, good technocracy added to the political setup, and everyone playing a role where they can come in and sign some kind of charter of agreement on the steps that need to be taken, and everyone makes sure that the pain is equally divided between the rich and not so on the vulnerable, would steer them for the next 3 to 6 months, and then they can move into more politicking. Probably this is not a time for politicking in a country under
Of course.
distress.
That is so true. I totally agree with you on that. I'd like to focus now on the default. And there are two aspects to my next question. The first is what the Sri Lankan Central Bank governor said. He said this is a preemptive negotiated default. I'd like to understand what that term means. My second part of the question is the officials also say that this move is going to free up the foreign currency to be able to use it for fuel, for medicine, and for food imports. How much of that can really help for the import of these items? To which extent can Sri Lanka import these necessary items? This is the second part of the question. Your take, sir.
Umar, very important questions. So let's look at the figures. Right now, Sri Lanka has reserves of $2 billion. And in the upcoming months, their payment requirements are much higher. In FY21, they ran a trade deficit of $10 billion, with the remittances remaining low. So a preemptive default would mean that they have spoken to their debtors that the upcoming payments need a rescheduling, and that rescheduling will help them save the foreign exchange that is payable to debtors to be paid on imports of essentials. So that is actually what they are trying to do. Couple that with the fact that they run into an IMF program and they are able to negotiate the terms, which will, of course, put more harsher conditions on the Sri Lankan economy, would give them a little more foreign exchange or hard currency in terms of dollars to be able to partly service some essential debt so that their credit rating doesn't go down, but use the same money to import pharmaceuticals, essentials, and energy so that they can start producing so that their exports once again picks up. So I think that's how it will be more helpful, rather than on that day turning up and saying that they are not paying, but engaging rather than not paying at all.
Now, Dr. Saab, also I was asking about, they are saying that the money that they are not, defaulting on, they will use it, the foreign currency that they have left, you talk about the 2 billion US dollars, that they will use it to import food, fuel and other necessary items. How much of that is can be imported in the amount of money that Sri Lanka currently has? And do you feel that by the time they've bought it, their negotiations with the IMF would have gone ahead to an extent that they can expect the money to arrive through the IMF program in time before they completely lose out on any foreign reserve in their country?
So good point. In the very quick time that they need the money, I think China is coming forward with about $2.5 billion in new loans and credit lines. That negotiation is progressing. You always remember the bilaterals don't have to give you a program which is based on the facts that you carry 10 reforms and then we will give you the money. The bilateral aid or bilateral fund flows or bilateral investments can flow in very, very quickly. So I'm hoping once they have the $2.5 billion, they can start using to create calm in the energy situation, pharmaceutical, and as we keep mentioning, food. In that interim period, the fund program always takes a little bit of time, though they are engaged with them, but they may take a month to finalize. And even if the board meeting of IMF was to be held in an emergency, one would hope in a few weeks that would happen. So 2.5 billion. I hope we will hear this news in coming days, and then the fund money, and that should ride them fairly comfortably as they move along.
All right, Dr. Saab, I'd also like to understand a fact as far as Sri Lanka's borrowing is concerned. What they say that under half of Sri Lanka's debt is market borrowings through international sovereign bonds, including one worth 1 billion that matures on July 25th. Would you, as an economist, make us understand what these sovereign bonds mean and what is the whole concept of it?
So the whole concept of sovereign bonds is that if you have a decent credit rating and you need to borrow from international markets, you go to international global players, you have a country risk that you are carrying by the credit rating agency. Let's say sometime you are in an IMF program, they've been in 16, so they have given you a stamp of approval that you are doing the necessary reforms, they have shown a picture of the economy. And then there are these global investors in the world. There are these investment banks, there are these family-run investment houses, there are the big investment individuals, the high net worth clients. And so you float your bond, you hire one of the consortium of banks, which helps you market your bond, let's say in Luxembourg or London or New York, and you go to the investors. You get a feel of what your rate is, and that how your risk is being thought of in the market, and then you are able to see what the countries of your risk profile by the rating agencies have recently approached the global markets and have done their bonds.
Right.
And then you come to a conclusion that anywhere between, usually these kinds of nations would be picking up $500 million to $1 billion. And as you rightly said, in July, so as I just to finish that, if they are able to go to the fund and there is a approval, then the July bond can be met by having another bond in the market, and that money can pay for that.
All right, thank you very much. One last very quick question I would like just an answer in one phrase. What is the most suitable option, going to the IMF or continuing with more sovereign bonds for a country like Sri Lanka? or an accumulation of both?
So here the multiple choice answers is both of the above. Because fund would give you a stamp of approval. It would also give your economy a more structured outlook
All right.
in terms of fiscal consolidation, consolidation on the balance of payments. Your balance sheet would start looking better, and the rate that then you would have to pay for launching an international bond would hopefully be lower, and the burden you carry on the international bond would be lower for years to come.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, to have joined us, leading economist from Pakistan, talking to us about the current crisis that Sri Lanka is embroiled in and how it can come out of it. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. Our second
My
story
thank
of
you
the
for
day,
having
ladies and
me.
gentlemen, concerns Pakistan's foreign policy and how it's going to be shaped in the future with a new government in place, and of course the relationship between US and Pakistan, US and Pakistan, China and Pakistan, India and Pakistan. Is there going to be a change, or is it going to be the same policy? More in the following report.
Maintaining a balanced and foreign policy trajectory is an unshakable consensus shared by all groups in Pakistan after many political power transitions in history. Reaffirming Pakistan's long-standing policy of constructive bilateral ties with all countries, Prime Minister Office expounded the new government wishes to constructively and positively engage with the US to promote shared goals of peace, security and development in the region. White House Press Secretary Vaisakhi had earlier stated that a democratic Pakistan is critical to US interests. Reiterating Pakistan's enduring commitment with Sino-Pak friendship, Prime Minister Sharif affirmed his government's commitment to further deepening the win-win economic cooperative partnership between the two countries in meeting with the Charge d'Affaires of People's Republic of China. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian noted in a statement that political change in Pakistan won't affect the general picture of China-Pakistan relations, and despite political situation, China will unswervingly insist on a friendly policy towards Pakistan. Striking a friendly tone, Prime Minister Shahbaz, in response to a congratulatory tweet by Indian counterpart Narendra Modi, called for securing peace and focusing on socio-economic development.
Now, to talk more about this very important topic, that is the foreign policy of Pakistan, we've been joined by Mustafa Abdullah Baloch. He is a renowned columnist. Mustafa Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Mustafa Saab, a lot of developments occurred in Pakistan. There's a new government in place, and the first thing that everybody is looking at is how Pakistan is going to move forward as far as its relationship with the US, with China, and even with the neighbors such as India is going to be. What do you foresee?
Well, first of all, Umar, thank you for having me on your show. See, Pakistan holds a very strategically important position in the region, and we can't afford to take sides, and we can't afford to stay in one camp and mess up with the other. So, the good thing is that the newly elected Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has taken a very balanced approach, and he has taken a very positive approach, and he understands the sensitivity of the position. So he has given a good gesture towards the U.S. because the way the former prime minister, created a situation with our former ally U.S. has created a very very alarming situation. So it will take years to fix that. So it's a good thing that Mia Shehbaz Sharif has been congratulated by all those important premiers of the countries like Narendra Modi from India and Putin from Russia. So we hope that the ties with the US will be stronger, and that's the way it should be, because the economic position of Pakistan is very critical, and we need to build good relations with everyone. We cannot afford to just be a party. So I guess Pakistan is moving in a progressive way and in a very positive way.
All right, in February this year, we had a comment by the United States that talked about Pakistan's relationship with China, that it is not going to affect Pakistan's relationship with the United States of America. Does that still hold true?
I guess so, and I guess this is the U.S. understands that Pakistan will definitely move on with the CPEC, and will carry on with our geostrategic ties with the China, So US understands the situation, and they're very comfortable with that, I guess. And I guess the newly elected government is very quite mature and quite reasonable, and they understand the sensitivity of the position. So we actually, to be very honest, the timing of former Prime Minister to visit Moscow was not good. It was not good,
All right.
and that definitely sent some wrong signals. But point is, apart from that, regardless of that, the US is still having a good relationship with Pakistan, and they have not given any sort of wrong signals.
All right, Mustafa's looking at the previous few weeks and, of course, what we've all witnessed, what you've talked about as well. How, in your point of view, does Pakistan need to move forward as far as its relationship with the US is concerned without compromising its relationship with China? Because we all remember that the CPEC was initiated under the current, under this the same leadership a couple of years back. And China understands that, and China, of course, knows the details of that as well. Nevertheless, how can Pakistan move forward? Because, of course, because of the previous incidents in the last few weeks, there has been a certain dent as far as Pak-US relations are concerned, whether it is evident or apparent or not. How can Pakistan move forward to mend that?
See, Pakistan can move forward by giving clear message to the US that we have been an ally, and we are willing to continue as an ally in terms of peace in the region. Because after the withdrawal of US from Afghanistan, Pakistan has to play a role over there, and US needs Pakistan. US needs to work together with Pakistan. So this is something very important, and this, I guess, the US understands very clearly. And
All right.
apart from that, yes.
Yes, yes, you were saying apart from that, what?
Apart from that, China has been a very crucial ally of Pakistan, and the US understands that position, that China has to continue the CPEC, and regardless of US having reservations on that, but the way Pakistan has been recently the former Prime Minister was quite aggressive, and was having a tough time against the US, and giving the wrong signals. So I guess the current government will try to control the damage.
All right. Now, speaking of relations, another country that comes to mind very quickly is India. In the previous regime, also in the first address to the nation, the former Prime Minister Imran Khan had said that if India puts one step forward, we'll put two steps forward. Now, again, we see Narendra Modi sending a congratulatory message to the current Prime Minister, that is Shehbaz Sharif Saab. Do you feel that there is some kind of an intent from India to move forward as far as bilateral relations with Pakistan is concerned? Because we see a lot of negativity in the last few years as far as Pak-India relationship is concerned, and the way India has been meddling into Pakistani affairs directly and indirectly and destabilizing it. Do you feel the relationship can be mended one way or the other?
Yes, and you're absolutely right. The way the Indian counterpart gave a positive message, and there was an attempt towards building a positive relationship with Pakistan in the future for the future. So I guess the current Prime Minister would take it forward. But regardless of moving forward, we have to keep our reservations regarding Kashmir issue. So we have to we can't compromise on that. So but nevertheless, we have to move forward with India as well, and we cannot continue to keep our ties like that, because we are obviously neighbors, and we both of them need each other. India also needs to build social economic ties with Pakistan, and the same goes with Pakistan. We also need India in a way that we need to grow together in the region. Similarly, we need to have good ties with Iran as well. So Pakistan has a very strong position in the region, and we cannot afford to break ties or blame the superpower for regime change and all that. So that was quite insensitive thing from the former prime minister, I would say. And it will be very difficult for the current prime minister to fix all these things. So it's a tough challenge for him actually.
I'd like your take on two things. The first is, of course, the congratulatory message that came from Vladimir Putin as well, as far as Mr. Shehbaz Sharif is concerned. And I'd like to quote that this new regime will contribute to further development of the Pakistan-Russia cooperation and partner interaction on the Afghan settlement, as well as countering international terrorism. I'd like your take on that. And secondly, we've seen that there has been a meeting in the US between the Indian and the US sides, in which there have again been fingers pointed to Pakistan for as far as terrorism and terrorism financing is concerned. Do you feel that the US, this is the second part of my question, do you feel that the US is continuing to apply pressure directly and indirectly on Pakistan despite the new government? And the fact remains that do you feel this is also going to hinge on Pak-US relationship?
See, the US has been obviously putting a lot of pressure on Pakistan after the 9/11 war war and the war on terror with Afghanistan. But nevertheless, we need a very strong foreign policy regarding that, and we need to understand that obviously US is having a good relationship with India. So what we need to do is to give a positive message to the US that yes, we have had certain bad patches in our earlier relationship, but now we need to move on. We also understand that okay, you have been also pressurizing a lot, but we also you should also understand the situation of Pakistan. You should also understand that Pakistan is facing a very strict and critical economic situation. You need to understand all these things. And if you talk about Russia, so Russia is also it's all about the relationship between the states. And it's not about that, okay, we have a new prime minister, so the relationship would change. But the new prime minister can play a positive role. He can move it into a next level. He can rebuild the relationship. He can move it to a next level. But the relationships between two states are between the states, not between individuals. So I guess the relationship with Russia as well as with China or maybe US will move very positive way, because the current prime minister is very, he's very hardworking, and I guess he understands the sensitivity of the situation. He understands that Pakistan cannot afford to further, worsen the relationship with any other of the country.
All right, Mustafa, we understand, as per what you've said and what a lot of other journalists are also saying, that the biggest foreign policy challenge for Pakistan remains its relationship with the United States of America. What are the other big foreign policy challenges in your point of view as far as Pakistan is concerned?
Regarding America, US?
No, foreign policy challenges not regarding America in general. I mean, I said US is one of the biggest foreign policy challenges, as you've just said yourself, and others also. What are the other foreign policy challenges do you feel Pakistan is currently facing that it has to work upon?
See, Pakistan has to work upon its relationships with Iran as well, I guess, because Iran can help us a lot in terms of energy and in terms of gas. So we are facing a lot of challenges internally regarding that. So if we strengthen the ties with Iran and we make it towards take it forward towards a socio-economically, so it will help Pakistan in the future. Yes.
All right, Mustafa. Now we understand that the new leadership wants to create a stronger relationship with all the partners that are present, whether it be the US or India or China. China, it already has a very strong relationship with India. It wants to build on the US, but with India, of course, there are preconditions that talks should be held on important thorny issues like in an illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and other issues that pertain to both countries. Then comes, of course, Russia, then comes Iran, as you've said that this is one country that we need to forge stronger ties with. What about the European Union? What is your take on the current status of relationship between the EU and Pakistan, given that the GSP Plus is a major advantage for Pakistan?
Exactly, you are absolutely right, and we have to understand the situation that we can get a good boost in our economic position if we rebuild our ties with the EU and we move it to a good level and focus it towards the economic aspects. So definitely, yes, that's a good way. That's a good way to boost the economy of Pakistan.
All right. Thank you very much, Mustafa. Abdullah, Baloch, to have joined us and to have talked about Pakistan's foreign policy, the challenges that look ahead as far as Pakistan is concerned, and what Pakistan needs to work upon. Let's come to our last stories very quickly. The first is about the Vaisakhi festival that is going to start. And this is a Sikh festival. It is going to begin very soon, in fact starting from tomorrow, and about over 2,000 Sikh pilgrims have arrived from India for this Vaisakhi festivals. And of course this starts, in fact the Vaisakhi festival starts from today, and there are a lot of measures that have been taken for the pilgrims so that they can properly visit all the areas of worship and properly do their festivities as far as Vaisakhi is concerned. It's a very important festival for the Sikh community, and we wish them all the very best as far as this is concerned. Our next story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Sir Ganga Ram. Now today is his birth anniversary, and we need to acknowledge the fact that Sir Ganga Ram, who is also known as the founder or father of modern Lahore, born in Nankana Sahib, he has been behind the construction of so many important places in Lahore, and let me just name some of those that he planned and constructed. Lahore's first sanitation system and waterworks, the Lahore Museum, the Mayo School of Arts, which is now the NCA, or the National Council of National College of Arts, the High Court, the Lahore Cathedral, the General Post Office, the Aitchison College, the Chemistry Department of the Government College Lahore, the Albert Victor wing of the Mayo Hospital. He built the Sir Ganga Ram Free Hospital, the Haley College of Commerce, the Lady McLagan Girls High School, the Ravi Road House of the Disabled, Sir Ganga Ram Trust Building on the mall, and so many others. I mean, I could just go on and on for that. But of course, Sir Ganga Ram has been an influence as far as Pakistan is concerned, especially when it concerns Lahore and Punjab. He has also worked a lot for the rights of the Sikhs, of the Hindus, of those Sikh Hindu women, because as per their religion, they cannot get remarried. So he really worked for them, for those destitute women, and of course for the children as well. And he worked tirelessly all his life, and a lot of people hold Sir Ganga Ram in high esteem, and so should we. So of course we need to remember him, and we need to take heed from all the good works that he has done so that we can carry on in his shadow. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, today is also the 5th death anniversary of Mashal Khan. Now Mashal Khan, who was lynched to death in Mardan in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa on this very day in 2017. He was a student at the Abdul Wali Khan University, Mardan, and was killed by an angry mob on this very day on allegations of posting blasphemous content online. There was a joint investigation team that was put into place to probe the case, and it was found that Mashal had not committed blasphemy of any sort. The administration was also blamed for inciting students after Mashal had openly criticized the varsity's corrupt practices. So in fact, the blasphemy was used just as a tool in order to take revenge on the way he was criticizing the varsity. What we need to take heed or take a lesson from the Mashal incident is that we need to, as Muslims, as citizens of Pakistan, move very carefully, especially when it concerns blasphemy. Never use something as blasphemy just as a political tool or any other tool to victimize people unnecessarily, as we have seen in the past. We are a Muslim nation, we understand the concept of blasphemy, but we also need to not use it as a tool, and we need to use it in the right place at the right time whenever it is really proven to be the fact, as it was proven that it was not the case as far as Mashal Khan is concerned. So of course we pray for the departed soul of Mashal Khan, and we wish such incidents do not happen again. On this note, we end today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to you, us in Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.